When James wrote his letter, he wasn't just putting words on a page. He was responding to the silent cry of people facing real conflicts, deep wounds, and doubts that tightened the soul. He looked at that scattered community, pressured on the outside and divided on the inside, and offered something no one expected, a truth that was firm, direct, and transformative. Hook, and perhaps the most surprising part, is realizing that what James saw in the hearts of those people is exactly what many live today. Battles no one sees, anguish no one understands, and questions that seem to have no answer. That's why when you step into the lessons James left behind, it's impossible not to feel as if he's right there beside you, describing with precision what you've been trying to carry alone. Today, we're going to open these pages with fresh eyes, because there is something here that can change the way you face what you're living right now. But before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to see how far this message is reaching. And make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, so you don't miss any of the upcoming content that will strengthen your faith and your journey. The first lesson we learn from chapter 1 of James is that trials are not obstacles meant to destroy, but opportunities meant to strengthen faith. He explains that joy in these situations comes from understanding that God is shaping something greater and deeper within each person who chooses to trust. James presents hardship as a tool of maturity, not a sign of abandonment. It is an intentional process that reveals firmness and prepares the heart for new stages. And this understanding opens a new perception about challenges. James reminds us that this joy is possible because there is purpose behind suffering. He says, "Well, my brothers, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. This truth shows that pain is never wasted. It shapes, aligns, and builds character. When someone grasps this, trials are no longer seen as enemies, but as teachers that lead toward growth. This first lesson also reveals that perseverance is built through friction. It does not grow in easy days, but in the moments when the soul must choose to trust even when circumstances seem unfavorable. It is this perseverance that strengthens the inner being and develops emotional and spiritual consistency. Faith then ceases to be just a belief and becomes a lived practice. And this construction, built little by little, leads to the state of maturity that James calls completeness. The second lesson we learn from chapter 1 of James is that true wisdom comes from above and is available to anyone who asks in faith. He shows that God does not withhold this wisdom. On the contrary, he gives it generously and without reproach. But James makes it clear that this request demands firm confidence without wavering. A divided mind weakens spiritual perception and steals clarity. That is why he calls attention to the inner attitude when asking. James reinforces this lesson with the verse, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him." James chapter 1, verse 5. This text reveals God's willingness to guide. Many face trials without direction because they try to solve everything with their own strength. But this second lesson invites us to seek understanding from the right source, the one who never fails. And this wisdom illuminates paths that once seemed confusing. He also warns that doubting while asking creates instability. The person who prays but does not believe they will receive becomes like waves tossed by the sea, unable to maintain a steady course. This image shows how doubt steals strength and clouds decision-making. Therefore, the second lesson teaches the cultivation of solid, disciplined, and unwavering faith. Trust becomes the bridge through which divine wisdom reaches the heart, and this trust must be nourished daily. The third lesson we learn from chapter 1 of James is that temptation does not come from God but is born from misdirected human desires. He explains that each person is drawn away by the inclinations of their own heart, and that is where the real danger lies. Temptation does not appear as something terrifying but as something appealing, convenient, and seemingly harmless. That is why resisting requires vigilance and awareness. Overcoming becomes an exercise in conscious decision-making. James describes this dynamic by saying, "Let no one say when he is tempted, 'I am tempted by God,' for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone." James chapter 1, verse 13. This statement dismantles the mistaken idea that God sends temptations to test people. Divine testing perfects. Temptation destroys. God proves, but he never entices someone into sin. He strengthens, but never sets traps. This clarity brings freedom and directs the heart toward the right vigilance, examining one's own desires. The third lesson also shows that temptation follows a sequence: desire, attraction, deception, and ultimately consequence. Understanding this helps a person cut off the process early, before desire produces actions that bring pain. Practically, this means identifying triggers, environments, thoughts, and habits that feed weakness. James points to a life of inner attention, where each choice is evaluated with seriousness. Resistance becomes possible when there is awareness and responsibility. And these three lessons, joy and trials, seeking wisdom from above, and discernment in the face of temptation, together form the foundation of mature spiritual life. They establish pillars that strengthen the heart and protect the journey. And as these pillars begin to solidify, a natural need arises to understand how faith translates into daily actions, something the next topic will reveal with even greater depth. The fourth lesson we learn in chapter 1 of James is that true faith requires practice, not just knowledge. He makes it clear that hearing the word is only the first step. What truly transforms a life is putting it into action. This lesson confronts the human tendency to accumulate information without transformation. Listening without obeying creates an illusion of maturity that collapses under pressure. That's why James calls for a faith that is active, alive, and expressed daily. To reinforce this lesson, he says, "But be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves." James chapter 1, verse 22. This verse exposes the difference between appearance and authentic spirituality. Many claim to have faith, yet their attitudes reveal another story. True obedience is visible in choices, character, and behavior when no one is watching. It is in this space that the word ceases to be theory and becomes life. James uses the analogy of a mirror to show that hearing without practicing is like looking at one's own face and immediately forgetting what one looks like. This imagery reveals the superficiality of a faith that refuses to deepen. Practice, on the other hand, solidifies identity and transforms behavior. Each obedient action becomes a brick in the building of a strong character. Thus, the fourth lesson invites a coherent life where faith and practice walk hand in hand. The fifth lesson we learn in chapter 1 of James is that true spirituality is expressed through purity of life. He describes what he calls pure religion, showing that it is not tied to external rituals but to internal attitudes that reflect the heart of God. Controlling the tongue, caring for the needy, and staying unstained by the world are marks of this purity. This lesson shows that spirituality without responsibility has never been the biblical pattern. He states, "Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world." James chapter 1, verse 27. This text shows that authentic faith always overflows in care. Purity is not isolation but compassionate action. James reveals that mature spirituality is practical, tangible, and aligned with the character of Christ. It is a call to a faith that touches lives. This fifth lesson also confronts the irresponsible use of words. Controlling the tongue means avoiding harm, lies, exaggeration, or destruction through careless speech. The tongue shapes relationships, creates environments, and can, within seconds, build or tear down. James links purity of faith with purity of speech. He shows that true spirituality begins in the mouth, continues in attitudes, and is confirmed by active love for others. The sixth lesson we learn in chapter 2 of James is that favoritism completely contradicts the Christian faith. He makes it clear that there is no room for discrimination based on appearance, social status, position, or wealth. Showing partiality distorts the character of a believer and offends the very heart of God. This lesson reveals that the faith community must be a place where everyone has equal value, where respect is not determined by what someone possesses but by who they are. James reinforces this lesson by saying, "My brethren, have not the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with respect of persons." James chapter 2, verse 1. This instruction makes it clear that favoritism is not merely a social error but a spiritual one. God does not show partiality, and his children are not to show it either. Faith becomes incoherent when it honors some and disregards others. This lesson calls for humility, empathy, and fairness in our treatment of all people. He also presents a practical example: the different treatment given to a wealthy man and a poor man entering a gathering. This scene shows how easily the human heart leans towards selective judgment. James uses this episode to reveal the need for vigilance against unconscious biases. He reminds us that the values of the kingdom always reverse human values. Where the world sees appearance, God sees purpose, and that awareness transforms relationships. The sixth lesson points us to the royal law, to love our neighbor as ourselves. This love eliminates favoritism, breaks prejudice, and levels the treatment of all people. Faith becomes visible when everyone is received with dignity and honor. When a community lives out this truth, it becomes a living reflection of the kingdom of God. Such posture is the fruit of deep spiritual maturity and the constant practice of empathy. And when these three lessons take root, practicing the word, living in purity, and rejecting favoritism, a new understanding of faith emerges. It stops being invisible and becomes visible through works. And it is exactly in this direction that James continues, showing how faith manifests itself in daily life and produces concrete evidence. Something the next topic will explore with even greater intensity. The seventh lesson we learn in the writings of James is that authentic faith always produces works. He affirms that merely declaring faith proves nothing if there are no actions accompanying it. James confronts the human tendency to separate belief from practice, reminding us that the two walk together. Faith manifests itself in choices, gestures, and real-life actions. It is in this coherence that the character of a believer is revealed. Regarding this, James declares, "Even so, faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone." James chapter 2, verse 17. This teaching shows that faith without works is like a seed that never germinates. It has potential but does not bear fruit. Works do not replace faith, but they prove its existence. And this truth leads to a deep reflection on how faith expresses itself in real life, especially in how one treats others and fulfills responsibilities. James also uses powerful examples such as Abraham and Rahab to show that faith is proven through courageous decisions. they were not recognized merely for what they believed, but for what they did because of that belief. Their faith crossed beyond words and materialized in actions. Thus, the seventh lesson teaches that genuine faith always produces movement, and this movement becomes visible testimony of transformation. The eighth lesson we learn is that the tongue carries power so great that it can build or destroy with equal ease. James describes the tongue as small in size but immense in impact. He warns about the responsibility of those who speak, including those who teach and influence. Speech reflects the heart, which is why it must be handled with vigilance and discipline. Spiritual maturity is revealed in the way a person uses their words. He states, "And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity, so is the tongue among our members." James chapter 3, verse 6. This verse reveals how much care is required when speaking. A careless word can wound, confuse, or even destroy entire relationships. In the same way, the right word can heal, encourage, and restore. The eighth lesson reminds us that the tongue must be guided by principles, not impulses. James also compares the tongue to a rudder that steers a large ship, showing how something small can direct something much greater. This image highlights the importance of mastering one's speech in order to guide one's life. Verbal discipline is the fruit of wisdom, self-control, and spiritual sensitivity. Whoever controls their tongue controls their steps, and this truth challenges each person to reflect daily on the power of their words. The ninth lesson we learn is that there is a profound difference between earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom. James reveals that wisdom driven by envy, ambition, or rivalry produces disorder and confusion. Such wisdom is limited, selfish, and usually centered on personal gain. In contrast, wisdom from above is pure, peaceful, gentle, and full of mercy. It brings peace wherever it arrives and transforms environments. To reinforce this lesson, he writes, "But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits." James chapter 3, verse 17. This passage shows that true wisdom always manifests in attitudes that reflect the character of God. While earthly wisdom agitates, heavenly wisdom calms. While earthly wisdom divides, heavenly wisdom unites. This difference defines the type of life each person builds. The ninth lesson also calls us to examine the motivations of the heart. Heavenly wisdom is born from a humble spirit aligned with God, not from personal interests. It manifests in how a person acts in conflicts, makes decisions, and treats others. Its fruits are visible and consistent over time. And the more this wisdom grows, the more it shapes attitudes, words, and daily choices. When these three lessons come together, active faith, control of the tongue, and heavenly wisdom, a balanced, coherent, and impactful Christian life emerges. It is as if James draws a spiritual map that guides both behavior and inner life. And once this alignment between faith, speech, and wisdom becomes clear, it naturally leads to a deeper understanding of how to deal with internal conflicts, pride, and desires. Themes the next chapter explores with even greater clarity. The 10th lesson we learn in chapter 4 of James is that many external conflicts are merely reflections of internal wars. He reveals that fights, tensions, and divisions often originate from disordered desires battling within the human heart. This lesson exposes the root of restlessness, longings that compete with one another and are never fully satisfied. James shows that the problem is not only in the world but inside each person, and that understanding changes how one sees conflict. He explains this by declaring, "From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lusts that war in your members?" James chapter 4, verse 1. This verse reveals that battles begin internally before they ever appear externally. The relentless pursuit of pleasure generates frustration, envy, and rivalry. The 10th lesson teaches that true transformation begins when these inner wars are acknowledged and brought before God. James also shows that unanswered requests often reflect wrong motives. He says that some people ask but ask amiss, desiring only their own pleasures. This instruction highlights the importance of aligning the heart before asking anything from God. Prayer becomes powerful when it flows from pure intentions, and this perspective helps explain why certain frustrations persist, because human desire is not aligned with divine purpose. The 11th lesson we learn is a call to submission to God as the pathway to resisting evil. James presents a clear order. First submit, then resist. He shows that the strength to overcome the enemy does not come from human effort, but from the correct spiritual position. Submission means recognizing God's authority and placing oneself under His direction. And this posture strengthens the heart against destructive influences. James declares, "Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you." James chapter 4, verse 7. This verse reveals that effective resistance is not passive but firm and strategic. When someone draws near to God, evil loses ground. The 11th lesson shows that humbling oneself before the Lord is not weakness but spiritual wisdom. It is the recognition that the power to overcome lies not in pride but in dependence. He also teaches that drawing near to God requires cleansing the hands and purifying the heart. This means abandoning wrong practices and correcting intentions. James describes this pursuit as mourning, weeping, and grieving, a genuine repentance that transforms. He shows that God exalts the humble and resists the proud. Thus, the 11th lesson presents humility as the doorway to restoration and spiritual victory. The 12th lesson we learn is James's warning against the arrogance of planning life without considering God. He confronts exaggerated human confidence, reminding us that no one controls tomorrow. Life, he says, is like a vapor, brief, fragile, and unpredictable. This truth is not meant to intimidate, but to guide. It calls us to recognize God's sovereignty in every decision. And that awareness brings balance and wisdom to daily living. To reinforce this lesson, he states, "Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away." James chapter 4, verse 14. This verse reveals the limitations of human existence. Planning without seeking God's will is acting presumptuously. James teaches that every choice should be accompanied by the awareness, "if the Lord wills." This simple phrase repositions the heart correctly. The 12th lesson also warns that ignoring the good one knows to do is sin. James shows that omission is wrong, not just harmful actions. He highlights the moral responsibility to act rightly when God's will is clear. This instruction broadens the understanding of righteousness, reminding us that spiritual maturity includes active, intentional decisions. And this transforms how a person views their daily responsibilities. When these three lessons come together, recognizing internal wars, submitting to God to resist evil, and rejecting the arrogance of living without His guidance, a posture of humility and balance is formed. James builds a pathway where the heart is aligned, pride is broken, and dependence on God becomes natural. And understanding this dynamic naturally leads to the desire to learn how to live with hope, justice, and perseverance. Themes the next chapter will reveal with great depth. The 13th lesson we learn in chapter 5 of James is the warning against wealth used unjustly. He denounces those who accumulate resources by exploiting others, ignoring the suffering of those who labor. This lesson does not condemn wealth itself, but the oppressive, greedy, and indifferent use of it. James exposes that God sees every injustice, even the ones the world tries to hide. And this awareness changes how a person handles power and responsibility. He states sharply, "Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you." James chapter 5, verse 1. This verse shows that divine judgment falls upon injustice, not upon honest prosperity. The 13th lesson reveals that God defends the oppressed and holds accountable those who use their strength to exploit. It is a call to live with integrity, generosity, and sensitivity toward the suffering of others. James also condemns withheld wages, the cries of laborers, and a luxurious life built upon the misery of others. He exposes the illusion of security produced by unjust wealth. This lesson reminds us that everything gained through impurity carries seeds of destruction. Divine justice never fails, and the Lord hears the cry of the mistreated. Thus, the 13th lesson calls each person to honesty and compassion in the use of resources. The 14th lesson we learn is the call to patience and perseverance in affliction. James points to the farmer as an example. He sows, waits, and trusts in due season. So must be the attitude of those who suffer injustices or endure prolonged hardship. Patience here is not passivity but active hope. It is the confidence that God is working even when nothing seems to change. And that posture strengthens the heart. He reinforces this truth by saying, "Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord." James chapter 5, verse 7. This verse expands the vision beyond the present, reminding us that suffering is not final. James cites the prophets and Job as witnesses of endurance. They faced difficult seasons with faithfulness and hope. Thus, the 14th lesson teaches that the waiting season is also a season of growth and maturity. James also encourages believers not to grumble against one another in affliction. He understands that suffering can lead to irritation, anxiety, and impatience. That is why he instructs them to keep their hearts aligned and avoid hurried judgment. True perseverance is quiet, steady, and full of faith. It becomes an example to others and glorifies God. The 14th lesson shapes character to resist pressure and remain steadfast. The 15th lesson we learn is about the power of prayer and community. James teaches that prayer should be present in every circumstance, in suffering, in joy, in sickness, and in restoration. He shows that prayer is the connection between the human heart and the heart of God, and that fellowship strengthens, heals, and protects. This lesson reveals that no one is called to walk alone. Spiritual strength grows in union. He declares, "And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up." James chapter 5, verse 15. This verse displays the depth of intercession and God's care. Mutual confession, according to James, brings healing and freedom. Fervent prayer produces real, concrete, spiritually powerful effects. Thus, the 15th lesson shows that Christian life is sustained by relational, sincere, active spirituality. James also reminds readers of Elijah's example to demonstrate that God answers the prayer of the righteous, even though Elijah was human just like anyone else. This proves that effectiveness is not in the person but in faith and alignment with God. He also emphasizes the importance of restoring those who wander from the truth. This act saves lives and covers a multitude of sins. The 15th lesson highlights the value of community, mutual responsibility, and constant care. When these three lessons come together, justice in the use of wealth, perseverance in affliction, and a life of prayer, a mature, balanced, and deep faith emerges. James ends his letter presenting a complete pathway. Faith that acts, speech that edifies, wisdom that guides, humility that transforms, and community that sustains. And as this whole picture becomes clear, the desire naturally grows to apply all of this in real life, allowing transformation to become visible and continuous. After walking through every chapter and every lesson in the book of James, it becomes impossible to ignore the invitation hidden behind each verse: to turn faith into real life. Now that you understand how to face trials, seek wisdom, resist evil, master your words, cultivate humility, and live with works that reflect Christ, the question that remains is simple and direct: what will change in your tomorrow? It's not enough to admire these truths. It's time to apply them with courage, intention, and consistency. The world needs people who not only believe, but live as if God is truly guiding every step. And before you go, ask yourself, which of these lessons challenged you the most today? And which one will you begin practicing immediately? If this content spoke to your heart, then you surely won't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue diving into teachings that will strengthen your faith and guide your life. And of course, watch the video that's appearing on your screen right now, because it perfectly complements what you've learned here.